started. Okay, Glenn's going to talk to us now about Are You a Slave? We've already discussed it with Julian, now he's going to continue on the discussion.
Oh, no, you're fine.
He's going to do it.
Oh, okay.
Larry,
Yeah.
could I take a few minutes and kind of clarify some things
Is
that
it okay, Glenn,
Julie
he wants to?
said?
Well, do you want to do this, or do you want to talk about other?
How long would it
No,
be?
just
can
a
do it
few,
afterwards.
just a few minutes, because I think it's important to kind of clarify some things that he threw out that I think might behoove us if we not discuss it, not take an hour, just maybe 5 or 10 minutes.
Yeah, do you want me to be done by 2:30? I guess that's the
No, I
question.
think we're okay, because the other speaker's not going to be here, so we got more time.
Okay,
Okay, go ahead.
okay, well,
Is that all right? Is that all right?
Put you in front, talk to us.
It was hard to understand based on the accent. I don't know if it was for y'all or not. It was for me. And the numerology stuff like a, what do you call roulette wheel? You're not sure where you're going to land. I don't get that, but that's okay. He evidently has studied this a long time and has come to some conclusions that fit for him. But I'm going to just make a statement. I think we're in the last days. I don't think the last 7 years has begun yet. I think the last 7 years begins when the covenant is confirmed. And if you look up the word confirmed, it means strengthened. Well, the covenant is here, probably. It may have started in 91 with the Oslo Accords, but it's been modified, rewritten. We've got the Abrahamic Accords right now, rather than the Abrahamic Covenant. Is that it? And it's going to be strengthened? My contention is that the UN and or the Arab states, or both, are the ones that strengthen or confirm the covenant that guarantees Israel's right to the land. And in that regard, we may be real close. I don't think the Palestinians are ever going to agree to the covenant. I think they're going to be forced to say, we're cutting you off, you're not getting any more money, you're not getting any more support unless you go along with this. I don't think they will ever do it just on their own free will. They may never do it, period. But I think we're in that time period, and I believe in the fall. I'm real disappointed that it didn't happen last year. Some people think it might happen this year. I don't think so. Will it happen next year? It's very possible. My concern is, as much as that, is what do we do from a freedom standpoint, if you want to call it that, that we have the freedom to live our life without being told how we live it. And because of the, what they call the passport, the medical passport, some countries, and
You
Israel,
can fly outside some countries.
Israel one of the most.
You look
Yeah,
at
look at
Canada.
their people.
You can't go to a restaurant.
Yeah, in Canada,
unless
you
you've
can't even
got
talk.
a passport
Yeah.
that proves you have the vaccine.
Testing
Well, the
ground.
Bible aptly prophesies that when he says, you who say you are Jews, but you're actually of the synagogue of Satan.
Right.
So,
You know.
but, the New World Order, all of this stuff is being pushed on us. We're here. How do we live according to that? And is it a fact that there could be some alternate digital currency that we could do commerce outside of the New World Order? I think there may well be.
Bullets.
Huh?
Give me back.
There you go.
Bullets. Live by the sword, die by the sword. I think bullets gotta go the same way.
It is Yahweh your God who goes out in front of you
How
and
about
fights
we
for
call
you.
it
Be
freedom
still
seed?
and
What's
know
that?
I am
Freedom
your
seed.
God.
Freedom for what?
Freedom seed.
You don't have to do anything.
How do you think Israel became
It's not our
Christian
fight.
again? They had bullets. Israel.
Agreed.
Well,
You see what I'm saying? I mean,
Agreed.
you
And
know,
I'm going to say one more thing, that God is God. There are spiritual aspects, but there are physical aspects. When they come together in harmony, then that's when things are right. When one is too overbalanced and we try to take the spiritual and make it physical, or take the physical and make it spiritual, we're liable to get in trouble from our concept of what we believe and what we do. So I'd really like to spend a month with this guy and not sleep for a month and figure out what it is he's talking about, because I really don't get most of it, even though a lot of it I agree with, because evidently he studied the Bible. But I never heard a single reference from him about anything he quoted from the Bible, the address, in other words. But maybe he's okay.
I'll give you scripting verse.
We'll have it
If you'll ask the questions that you asked him, I'll find scripting verse for you.
Well, I mean, it's there. I just wonder.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, I'll be glad to share it with everybody.
Mention it or have it on.
That's my favorite thing to do is Bible thumping.
I like it too.
I'm gonna tell you right now.
Thanks.
You know.
So we'll try to get Julian back. Would y'all like to have Julian back?
Yes.
Okay, let's do that.
Thanks,
Okay.
man. Sorry.
Glenn, you got the floor.
Okay, well, one thing is certain, that there's lots of fraud and deception.
Yes.
It's everywhere. The bar is really the enemy. They're here. It's warfare. We gotta start treating it like warfare. I don't know if you remember the Japanese in the Second World War. They would not surrender. There was no surrender. We had to go in and we had to kill every last one of them on those islands. That's the reason we didn't want to invade Japan, because that's what it was going to be like. And that's the way we got to treat it. This is warfare. This is literally warfare. And I'm going to show you right now that it's warfare. We are at war. And you got to treat it like it's warfare. First of all, I'm not a liar. Well, I'm in a lawyer. No, I'm in a liar. You should never take my word for anything. You should always do your own research. I provided references to Adrian in their research. I don't know everything. I'm open to any ideas. There's 4 types of people you'll meet in your life. There's the people who try to wake up the slaves. There's the slave masters. There's the people who have no idea they're slaves. And there's the people who like being slaves. Which one are you? Do you really know for sure? Are you who you think you are? Are you a slave? I'll bet you, if they're, like you're saying, they won't let us live our life like we want to, well, then they think that we're their property. And what's a slave? A slave is someone's property. Think about it. If you can see through the illusion, then you are the solution. If people do not know their basic rights and freedoms, how can they know when or if their rights and freedoms are being infringed? Never forget the men who started this country were marijuana-growing, whiskey-drinking, tax-evading rebels who left their beds at night to shoot at the pigs.
That's right.
All tyranny needs to gain a foothold is for people of good conscience to remain silent. I don't trust the government. I don't trust the medical, pharmaceutical, industrial complex. I don't trust the military industrial complex. I don't trust the mainstream media. I don't trust the bankster criminal cabal that owns the government, owns the medical, pharmaceutical, industrial complex, owns the military industrial complex, and owns the mainstream media. If you call me a conspiracy theorist, I don't trust you. Government's not reason, it's not eloquence, it is force. Like fire, it's a dangerous servant and a fearful master. If a nation expects to be ignorant and free in a state of civilization, it expects what never was and never will be. So are you a taxpayer? Do you get paid with banknotes? Are you a citizen or are you a subject? These are all things we're going to talk about here, because this is all evidence of slavery. They're badges of slavery. The term citizen in the United States is analogous to the term subject in the common law. Did you know that? If you're a U.S. citizen, you're a subject. This is taken from Merriam-Webster's dictionary. Citizen, subject, national citizen. A citizen may indicate being a member of a sovereign state, especially one showing democratic forms and usages, owing its allegiance, sharing in individual political rights. Subject may imply a state of subjection to a person, such as a monarch, without much sense of membership in a political community or sharing in political rights. A national is a more general word, may apply to anyone owing permanent allegiance to a nation, indicates one belonging to a broad category that includes both people who are legally citizens or subjects, and also people who have not attained such legal status. Citizen or subject is a legal status. That is Roman law, okay? What you're seeing is Roman law all over the place. And so you want to be a national, but that's it. A citizen is a term of municipal law. Citizenship carries with it the idea of connection or identification with the state and a participation in its functions, as such implies much more than residence. These are all taken from court cases. Citizenship is a political status and may be defined and privilege limited by Congress. U.S. citizen, what they're talking about there. A subject, one that owes allegiance to a sovereign and is governed by his laws. The natives of Great Britain are subjects of the British government. And actually, that's not necessarily true. Nationals, so that's not completely true. That's Black's Law Dictionary, 4th edition, which is made by lawyers, so that's not surprising. Anyways, men in free governments are subjects as well as citizens. As citizens, they enjoy rights and franchises. As subjects, they are bound to obey the laws. The term is little used in the sense of countries enjoying a republican form of government. So, what does that tell you? Do we have a republic here? We're supposed to. Subject, one who owes allegiance to a sovereign and is governed by that sovereign's laws. Speaking generally, we may say that the terms subject and citizen are synonymous. Subjects and citizens are alike, those whose relation to the state is personal and not merely territorial, permanent, and not merely temporary. This equivalent, however, is not absolute, for in the first place, the term subject is commonly limited to monarchical forms of government, while the term citizen is more specially applied in the cases of republics. Well, it's become a little bit more murky than that. Black's Law Dictionary, 8th edition. Finally, it's to be noticed that the term subject is capable of a different and wider application in which it includes all members of the body politic, whether they're citizens or resident aliens. All such persons are subjects, all being subject to the power of the state and to its jurisdiction, and is owing to it, at least temporarily, fidelity and obedience. And that's Black's Law Dictionary, 8th edition. In our opinion, it is not the intent of the legislature to restrict the operation of the statute to those who were subjects of the United States government, but those only who were subjects of the United States government, and exclude therefrom unnaturalized residents of foreign birth, whether black or white. Now, there's going to be some cases in here that talk about race, and this is what I was looking for. When you guys started talking about stuff, I started looking for something. I wanted to look for a papal bull, okay, called Dum Diversus. Does anybody know what Dum Diversus is?
Dum Diversus?
Yeah, it's a papal bull. It was in the 1450s. I was going to, actually, I've talked about it in my videos, and I was looking through some of my videos to pull it up, so I was going to add it on at the end of this presentation. Because it's Dum Diversus, and it's where this Pope went and authorized the king of, I think, in Portugal, to enslave anybody that wasn't Catholic. And it's like the 1450s, 1400s, okay? The point being is that's why we have slavery here today, okay? Is because of this pimp, well, I meant the Pope. No, I meant the pimp. That went and issued this papal bull to enslave anybody that's not Catholic, okay? And so that's why we have slavery. And so we're going to talk a little bit about race here. And I completely disagree that anybody of any color should be a slave. But this is court cases, and it's to explain some points, okay? And in fact, because who knows who was sleeping with who in the 1700s? I show people of all races how they can make a statement of original status and show that they have a direct bloodline to the founding fathers, okay? No matter what race they are, or no matter how they look. And so I do that to anybody that wants it. So, this whole idea of slavery is again more of the Roman cults divide and conquer, Okay, that's what it's all about, is divide and conquer. And we have to get beyond that stuff. Anyways, it is evident that they, U.S. citizens, have not the political rights that are vested in citizens of the state. So in America, there's actually at least two different classes of citizens. Now think about this. The Constitution, when the Constitution was written, there was no such thing as a U.S. citizen. Okay? When the Constitution was written, we were all state citizens. Our founders, our ancestors that wrote the Constitution, and in the preamble it says, we the people, and I'm going to talk about it here, we the people do ordain and establish this Constitution for ourselves and our posterities. Okay? Well, I can show that I am posterity. I can show, my mother did a bunch of genealogy, and I can show I have an ancestor here back in the 1700s. His name was Livingston. And there was a Livingston that was one of the governors of the colonies. Anyway, so I don't know how closely related he was to that Livingston, but I can show I have numerous ancestors that were here prior to the War of Independence. Anyways, it is evident that they, U.S. citizens, have not the political rights that are vested in citizens of the states. So really, if you think about it, we're all state citizens. U.S. citizens are citizens of the District of Columbia, over there between Virginia and Maryland. Quite frankly, I don't remember ever being in the District of Columbia, and I am not particularly interested in going there. I've kind of circumvented it a few times. I've been in Maryland and Virginia. Anyways, they are not constituents of any community which is vested in any sovereign power of government. Their position partakes more of the character of subjects than of citizens. They are subject to the laws of the United States but have no voice in its management. If they are allowed to make laws, the validity of these laws is derived from the sanction of government in which they are not represented. Mere citizenship they may have, but the political rights of citizens they cannot enjoy. Again, that goes back to the former slaves. Okay, I'm not going to say what race that was. It's just the former slaves. And again, I show people how they can not be a slave. And I don't care what race you are, it doesn't matter. I think we're all human. That's all that matters to me.
It's the only race there is.
Civil rights under the 14th Amendment are for federal citizens, not state citizens. Federal citizens, as parents, have no right to the custody of their infant children except subject to the paramount right of the state. If you're being attacked by some government agency, you got to think about where it's coming from. It's really not coming from that idiot that's doing the attacking. It's really coming from the bar member scum that are telling them to do it. And that's who you go after, is the bar member scum. And again, you have to treat it like warfare. Okay? It is warfare. The 14th Amendment referred to slavery. Consequently, the only persons embraced by its provisions and for which Congress was authorized to legislate in the matter were those then in slavery. No white person born within the limits of the United States is subject to their jurisdiction, or born without those limits, and subsequently naturalized under their laws, owes his status of citizenship to the recent amendments of the federal Constitution. They're talking about the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments. All citizens of the United States shall have the same right in every territory, state, and territory as is enjoyed by white citizens thereof to inherit, purchase, lease, sell, hold, and convey real and personal property. That is current law. You look it up. 42 U.S.C. 1982. That's what it says. Right now, you look it up. Therefore, the U.S. citizens residing in one of the states of the Union are classified as property and franchises of the federal government as an individual entity. These two cases are actually summaries. Okay, people contact me and say, I don't see where it says that. Well, it doesn't actually say that, but if you read the whole case, that's what it says. It's a summary of what the case says. The second one, U.S. citizen upon leaving the District of Columbia becomes involved in interstate commerce as a resident does not have the common law right to travel of a citizen of one of the several states. It's all corporate law. really is what it comes down to. It's corporate law, it's commerce. It falls under the Commerce Clause. But they all these bar member scum have an oath of office and they perjure it at the drop of a hat. And that's what you go after, is the felonies that they're involved in.
Can I ask you a quick question?
I really don't have time for questions. I'm an hour behind.
Okay.
And so, after, if we have time, but I'm an hour behind. I'm supposed to be done by 2:30.
Okay, go ahead.
After the adoption of the 14th Amendment, a bill which became the first Civil Rights Act was introduced in the 39th Congress. The major purpose of which was to secure the recently freed Negroes all the civil rights secured to white men. None other than citizens of the United States were within the provisions of the Act. If you go say, I am entitled, it's all in the words you use. If you say I'm entitled to civil rights, you're saying I'm one of the slaves. You have unalienable rights. That's what the Declaration of Independence says. Residents, as distinguished from citizens, are aliens who are permitted to take up a permanent abode in the country, being bound to the society by reason of their dwelling in it. They are subject to its laws so long as they remain there, and being protected by it, they must defend it. Although they do not enjoy all the rights of citizens, they have only certain privileges which law or custom gives them. Permanent residents are those who have been given the right of perpetual residence. They are a sort of citizen of a less privileged character and are subject to the society without enjoying all its advantages. Their children succeed to their status, for the right of perpetual residence given them by the state passes to their children. This is taken from the Law of Nations by Vattel, Book 1, Chapter 19, Section 213, page 87. One does not necessarily become a non-resident by absconding or absenting himself from his place of abode. It's what you tell them. We gotta know about these words. These people are Satanists.
Yep.
They're liars. They're thieves. They're murderers. It's warfare. They're the lowest form of life there is.
Yep.
And it's all tied to these bar member scum. Don't get me going. You're gonna get me going here. Residents, the fact of being officially present, the statutory presence of an incumbent in a benefice. It's all commercial. Every taxpayer is assessed to pay trust having sufficient interest in preventing abuse of the trust to be recognized in the field of this court's prerogative jurisdiction. That's another summary from that case. Taxpayers are not state citizens. You can be a citizen of Texas or Delaware or whatever without being a U.S. citizen. Slater's protestations to the effect that he derives no benefit from the United States government have no bearing on his legal obligation to pay income tax. Excuse me, unless the defendant can establish that he is not a citizen of the United States, the IRS possesses authority to attempt to determine his federal tax liability. This is Article 4, Section 3, Clause 2. Congress shall have power to dispose of and make all needful rules and regulations respecting the territory or other property belonging to the United States. If you are subject to regulations, you are property. That's what a slave is. You are owned. That's what a slave is. I got my book available. It's in the back there, called Trump, A True American Patriot or Not. It's about the deep state and who they are and where they came from and how they got there. It's about their history, and it's full of court cases and international treaties and law dictionary definitions. I do aerospace engineering consulting when I work, and so I was always taught to substantiate everything I do. And so there's very little in there that's my opinion. Most of it is about 97% of it is supported by court cases, law dictionary definitions, international treaties, all sorts of stuff. You can order the book from Amazon or my website. If you get it from my website, I'll autograph it for you. Make sure you let me know if you have something special on the autograph you want me to say. My website is sovereigntyinternational.fyi. You want to know the origins of the deep state? Who is behind it? You want to know why it's called the Trump administration? It's all tied to the Russian cult. You want to know what an administration is? You want to know how Trump came to be president? You want to know who owns Congress? Do you want to know why they're called law enforcement officers? They're enforcing the martial law. We're under martial law, have been for decades. Do you want to know how you have become a slave? Do you want to know what the root cause of the War of Independence was? It's the same thing that's going on now. Do you want to know why every president goes to visit the Pope on their first international trip? Have you noticed that? There's Obama. Now, see, the pimp is sitting there laughing and chuckling. With Trump, he doesn't look too happy. Maybe it's because justice is coming.
Yes.
In reality, they're not after me, they're after you. I'm just in the way. All subjects over which the sovereign power of the state extends are objects of taxation. Remember, we're talking about the subject, right? Well, this is talking about subjects. All subjects over which the sovereign power of the state extends are objects of taxation, but those over which it does not extend are exempt from taxation. This proposition may be pronounced as self-evident. It's obvious. The sovereignty of the state extends to everything which exists by its authority or its permission. If you exist by the permission of the state, then you are property of the state. If they can take a penny, they can take it all. They don't have to give you anything. For the very idea that one may be compelled to hold his life or the means of living or any material right essential to the enjoyment of life at the mere will of another seems to be intolerable in any free country where freedom prevails as being the essence of slavery itself. Ain't that the truth? So, are we in a free country or are we enslaved?
Enslaved.
I don't know about you, but I'm not. But I get up in their face too. And that's what you have to do. Again, you have to understand it's warfare. These people are pirates. They're Satanists. Don't get me going. This is the preamble for the Constitution. It says, we the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, and provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. Do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. All you need to do is come up with one ancestor that was here before the War of Independence. And ideally it's the War of Independence. But even if you can come up with one that was here before the Civil War, that's just about as good. War of Independence is even better. But all you got to do is come up with one ancestor that was here before them, and you have your posterity. But you have to say the words. You have to say the words, you have to get up in their face, you have to lock horns with them and watch them run and hide when you do. When I first started doing this stuff, it scared the heck out of me. I'll be honest with you. And I tell other people about it, and they are scared to death. I think you told me that it scares the heck out of you.
Hey man, I'll tell you, could have opened a Coke bottle on my tail.
But the point is, once you see their reaction, the more you get up in their face, and if you do it right, you watch them run and hide. And because
I can attest to that too.
A nation or a state is, as has been said at the beginning of this work, a body politic or a society of men uniting together for the purpose of promoting their mutual safety and advantage by their combined strength. From the very design that induces a number of men to form a society which has its common interests and which is to act in concert, it is necessary that should be established a public authority to order and direct what is to be done by each in relation to the end of the association. This public authority is the sovereignty, and he or they who are invested with it are the sovereign. Okay? We're talking about who the sovereign is in America. Every country has one. The sovereign can be one person. It can be a group of people. You have to know who you are. That's one of the things that I talk about. I always talk about my videos is, do you know who you are? Most people have no idea. If you don't know who you are, then you're a slave. That's all you are. You're a piece of property. You'll go and get vaxxed, all of that stuff.
Yep.
Okay? You're a slave, and they can do anything they want. You have to know who you are.
Yep.
A
You have to know how
sovereign,
to stake that claim too.
a sovereign is a chief ruler with supreme power. A king or other ruler with limited power and action is not maintainable against a foreign sovereign. My case, and I'll show it to you here. I had one going on down here in Tarrant County Criminal Court 3. It's disappeared. Sovereignty is the right to govern a state or nation. A nation or state sovereign is the person or persons in whom that resides. The words people of the United States and citizens are synonymous terms and mean the same thing. They both describe the political body who, according to our Republican institutions, form the sovereignty and who hold the power to conduct the government through their representatives. They are what we familiarly call the sovereign people, and every citizen is one of those people and a constituent member of the sovereignty. This is Dred Scott versus Sandford, 1857, before the Civil War. In Canada, this is not unusual. This is a Canadian court case. The sovereign people, through the representative, have created the court and the board, as well as the municipal council, and define the rights and duties of each. Casalomas in Toronto. The Parliament of Canada and the legislatures of the several provinces are sovereign with their spheres defined by the British North America Act, but none of them has the unlimited capacity of the individual. Australia, translated into constitutional terms, it denotes the sovereign power which resides in the people, is exercised on their behalf by the representatives. Another Australian court case. The powers of government in this country are derived from the people who are the ultimate sovereign. England, every individual was sovereign over himself. I have exclusive content available on my website and on Patreon. My website has 2 subscription levels and I accept cryptocurrencies. My basic subscription level is $29.99 a year for the videos only and $49.99 a year for the videos plus unlimited email consultations. I'm not a liar. Well, I'm an attorney. No, I'm not a liar. But I can tell you what I would do under certain circumstances and where to find the forms. The only power that these New World Order Satanists have over us is through fraud and deception, and my agenda is to expose it for all our benefit. I cannot fight all the battles. When the rights of the least of us are violated, we are all diminished. Some of my content is Arlington Private Information Share, which is 7 videos by itself. Land deed training, I got about 3 videos on that. Estoppel certificates training, foreclosure estoppel certificates training, corporate denial training, toll roads notice and demand training, invoice training, notice of void judgment training, revocation of signature training, third-party witness training, federal habeas corpus training, revocation of voter registration, criminal complaint training, lawsuit training, other training requests, depending on if you have anything that I can do and that's appropriate for what I do. Northeast Private Information Share videos are also there. All forms, files, and other instructions are available for free, linked on my videos and on my website. The exclusive content's available on my website, and you can buy a subscription there, and you can also go to Patreon, Sovereignty International. The people or sovereign are not bound by general words and statutes restricted to a prerogative, right, title, or interest unless expressly named. Acts of limitation do not bind the king or the people. The people have been ceded all the rights of the king, the former sovereign. That's what happened when we went and did that Declaration of Independence. Act of revolution, the sovereignty involved on the people, and they are truly sovereigns of the country, but they are sovereigns without subjects, and have none to govern but themselves. The citizens of America are equal as fellow citizens, as joint tenants in the sovereignty. That's the state citizens. People of the state are entitled to all rights which belong to the king by his prerogative. It will be admitted on all hands that with the exception of the powers granted to the states and the federal government through the constitutions, the people of the several states are unconditionally sovereign within their respective states. Do you know who you are? This is even in London. It talks about it. Citizens of London are either freemen or such as reside and keep the family in the city. Some are citizens and freemen, some are not, who have not so great privileges as others. The citizens of London may prescribe against the statute. I don't agree with your statute, so I'm not going to obey it. because their liberties are reinforced by statutes. None of these statutes apply to we the people. None of them. They're all DC territorial codes. Governments are but trustees acting under derived authority and have no power to delegate what's not delegated to them, but the people as the original fountain might take away what they have delegated and trust to whom they please. The sovereignty in every state resides in the people of the state, and they may alter and change their form of government at their own pleasure. Do you know who you are? Sovereignty itself is, of course, not subject to law, for it is the author and source of law. But in our system, our sovereign powers are delegated to the agencies of government. Sovereignty itself remains with the people, by whom and for whom all government exists and acts. We, the people, are the source of law. They can't tell us what to do. There's no such thing as the power of inherent sovereignty in the government of the United States. In this country, sovereignty resides in the people, and Congress can exercise no power which they have not by their Constitution entrusted to it. All else is withheld. But in considering the question before us, it must be borne in mind there is no law of nations standing between the people of the United States and their government and interfering with their relation to each other. The powers of the government and the rights of the citizens under it are positive practical regulations plainly written down. The people of the United States have delegated to it certain enumerated powers and forbidden it to exercise others. Do you know who you are? The sovereignty of the state does not reside in the persons who fill the different departments of the government, but in the people from whom the government emanated, and they may change it at their discretion. Sovereignty then in this country abides with the constituency and not with the agent. But this remark is true both in reference to federal and state governments. Remember, the federal government, the federal constitution is the supreme law of the land. That kind of trumps everything. It is true that in common law, the duty of the Attorney General is to represent the king, he being the embodiment of the state, but under the democratic form of government now prevailing, the people are king. So the Attorney General's duties are to that sovereign rather than to the machinery of government. The law of Congress do not extend to the territorial limits of the states and have force only in the District of Columbia and other places that are within the exclusive jurisdiction of the national government. You have to understand. DC Code, remember they were talking, and that last guy was talking about the Cestui Que Vie Trust Act. Well, DC Code talks about the Cestui Que Trust too. And that's in 1901. So it's here. The exclusive jurisdiction which the United States have important dockyard ceded to them and is derived from the express assent of the states by whom the cessions are made. It could be derived in no other manner because without it, the authority of the state would be supreme and exclusive therein. You have to understand, there is no land in Texas that was ceded to Congress. Nowhere in Texas. There's no land in Texas. I don't care what, I don't care anything. There's no land in Texas that was ever ceded to Congress. So they don't have a shred of authority in Texas. All of these Texas Penal Code, those are actually DC codes. Okay? You got to read in the definitions. It talks about persons. Those are all U.S. citizens. My contact information, my blog is sovereigntyinternational.wordpress.com. My website is sovereigntyinternational.fyi. My email address is engineerwin@yahoo.com. My YouTube profile, Sovereign Living. My Facebook community page, I deleted it due to censorship being on the part of Facebook. My private group called Sovereignty International is being deleted. I have a private group at prelist.org called Administrating-Your-Public-Servants and on Google called Administrating-Your-Public-Servants. Follow me on Steemit at Sovereignty International. I've got a library profile, a Patreon profile, and a MeWe group. We hold these truths to be self-evident. It's obvious that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, and among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Magna Carta is called the Great Charter of English Liberty. The Canadian Handbook for Judges talks about the Magna Carta on page 77. It says, Magna Carta says, will not deny or defer any man either justice or right. This is a Canadian court case. The Magna Carta is not a unilateral act emanating solely from the spontaneous will of the king, as the charters of the predecessors of John. Neither is it a treaty, for we cannot say it was concluded between two legitimate independent sovereignties, nor between the two nations, nor is it a law. The barons do not appear in it as subjects, for they are freed from their promise of fidelity, and the king, brought captive, placed before them, submitted to the conditions which the conquerors imposed upon him. Magna Carta is therefore a contract, but resembles a treaty concluded between two nations, in that one of the parties, in virtue of the law of war, can impose its will upon the other. So if you think about it, what they did is they stuck a sword to his throat and they said, "Here, king, we want you to sign this." And he signed it, obviously. Or we'll run you through right now. So why do people set up governments in the first place? Protection against foreign enemies, protection from each other, to administer disputes in a fair and impartial manner. The only legitimate function of government is to protect the rights of the people. So you have a hierarchy. God created we the people created the government, and the government created corporations. And if you go and wind up in some contract where you're saying I'm a corporation, then you're property. That's what a subject is. That's what a slave is. Our rights come from God. If our rights come from God, only God can take them away.
Amen.
That's why the founding fathers put that stuff in there. And I can tell you, in places like communist Canada, they're always trying to take God out of the Constitution,
Yeah.
because they know what that means.
Yeah.
And the Canadian people are too stupid to figure it out.
Yeah.
A citizen of one state is a citizen of every other state in the Union. State citizens, right? Because we can travel from state to state and enjoy all the rights and privileges of citizenship. The individual may stand upon his constitutional rights as a citizen. He's entitled to carry on his private business in his own way. His power to contract is unlimited. He owes no duty to the state or to his neighbors to divulge his business or to open his doors to an investigation so far as it may tend to incriminate him. He owes no such duty to the state, since he receives nothing therefrom, beyond the protection of his life, liberty, and property. His rights are such as existed by the law of the land, long antecedent to the organization of the state. Our rights were here before the government was here, and can only be taken from him by due process of law and in accordance with the Constitution. Among his rights are refusal to incriminate himself and the immunity of himself and his property from arrest or seizure except under the judicial power warrant, a warrant of the law. He owes nothing to the public so long as he does not trespass upon their rights. There are at least two major classes of citizens, state and federal. There is in our political system a government of each of the several states and a government of the United States. Each is distinct from the other and has citizens of its own. One may be a citizen of a state and yet not a citizen of the United States. There's a clear distinction between national citizenship and state citizenship. Don't forget to subscribe to this YouTube channel. Don't forget to follow me on Steam at Sovereignty International. Don't forget to like this video. I'm going to upload this video to YouTube. On YouTube, don't forget to click the bell next to the subscribe button so you're notified when there's a new upload. On Steam, don't forget to vote and make your comments. There's the front page of my channel. The bell, the subscribe button is normally red. It's been clicked. The bell hasn't been clicked. The arrow's pointing at the bell. You've got to click the bell if you want to be notified. Instead, this provision protects only those rights peculiar to being a citizen of the federal government. It does not protect those rights which relate to state citizenship. Citizenship of the United States does not entitle citizens to privileges and immunities as citizens of the state, since privileges of one are not the same as the other. The privilege of immunities of citizens of the United States do not necessarily include all the rights protected by the first 8 amendments to the federal Constitution against the powers of the federal government. The only absolute and unqualified right of a United States citizen is to residence within the territorial boundaries of the United States. Why on earth would anybody ever say, I'm a U.S. citizen? That's like saying, hey everybody, I'm a slave, you can go ahead and abuse me all you want. Such construction ignores the rights of a state in virtue of its sovereignty to confer citizenship within its own limits, where the rights incident to such a status are not of the citizenship mentioned in the federal Constitution. It does not follow that because one has all the rights and privileges of a citizen of the state, he must be a citizen of the United States. Such a distinction has long been recognized in this county. The rights of the original judicial citizens of the states as such are not under consideration in the 14th Amendment. They stand as they did before the 14th Amendment and are fully guaranteed by other provisions. So again, you've got to understand what happened. In 1861, the southern states walked out of Congress. And I think that was like a major mistake. But what happened, happened. And Congress ceased to have a quorum. They couldn't conduct business. And Lincoln ordered it back under executive authority. And they've been operating under executive authority ever since. And in 1871, Congress created a corporation called United States of America, and that's what's operating. And you'll see that all over the place. You'll see it on Air Force One, you'll see it on your passport, you'll see it on the Silver Eagle that I carry in my wallet. It says United States of America. 1 ounce of silver. I have that so then I'm not a pauper. You understand the implications of that? We're going to talk about that. The 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments were designed mainly for the protection of the newly emancipated Negroes. On the other hand, the 14th Amendment, upon the subject of citizenship, declares only that all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. Here there is a limitation to persons born or naturalized in the United States, which does not extend to persons born in any place subject to their jurisdiction. The persons declared to be citizens are all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof. The evident meaning of these last words is not merely subject in some respect or degree to the jurisdiction of the United States, but completely subject. A U.S. citizens can murder their unborn children. This is the Roe v. Wade case. The unborn are not included in the definition of person as used in the 14th Amendment. By the way, that's also the same rationale that the Nazis used when they murdered all those Jews. And we're doing it today to murder unborn children. That's the most innocent of innocent. And while 14th Amendment does not create a national citizenship, it has the effect of making that citizenship paramount and dominant instead of derivative and dependent upon state citizenship. So, think about what happened again. Before the Constitution was written, there was no U.S. citizen. And so, there was only state citizens. Then the Constitution was written, so then you couldn't be a U.S. citizen without first being a state citizen. Think about it. So that means that originally, a U.S. citizen was derivative and dependent upon being a state citizen first. You had to be a state citizen before you could be a U.S. citizen. And the 14th Amendment turned it upside down, turned it into the opposite of what the Founding Fathers intended. The term resident and citizen of the United States is distinguished from a citizen of one of the several states in that the former is a special class of citizen created by Congress. It might be correctly said there is no such thing as a citizen of the United States. A citizen of any one of the states of the Union is held to be and called a citizen of the United States, although technically and abstractly there is no such thing. Check out my other videos, Banks of Thieves playlist, Roman Cult playlist, Bankrupt Corporate So-Called Governments, Bar Members 1 through 7. Actually, it's number 11, or no, it's 7, I think, or 8. Anyways, do it yourself, how not to volunteer for the selective service in the draft, martial laws here. Do it yourself, no income tax. Do it yourself, free mail. Do it yourself, kangaroo courts, Canada Border Pigs playlist, Bar Members and their Satanic Connections playlist. The right to trial by jury in civil cases guaranteed by the 7th Amendment and the right to bear arms guaranteed by the 2nd Amendment have been distinctly held not to be privileges and immunities as citizens of the United States, guaranteed by the 14th Amendment against abridgment by the states, and in effect the same decisions made in respect to the guarantee against prosecution except by indictment of a grand jury contained in the 5th Amendment, and in respect to the right to be confronted with witnesses contained in the 6th Amendment. Remember, I said earlier, U.S. citizens don't have access to the first 8 amendments of the Constitution against the powers of the federal government. The technical niceties of common law are not regarded. A jury does not figure ordinarily in the trial of an admiralty suit, and the verdict of a jury merely advisory and may be disregarded by the court. They're just here for the show. The rules of practice may be altered whenever found to be inconvenient or likely to embarrass the business of the court. Yeah, we want to railroad this guy, so let's just ignore all that stuff. A court of admiralty acts upon equitable principles. Why do you think those judges get up there and say, I can do anything I want here? Because that's exactly what he can do. Why did he even go in there?
Notice that's all you hear today, as well as equity.
That's
Equity
right.
this, equity that.
Yeah.
A libel of information does not require all the technical precision of an indictment at common law. If the allegations describe the offense, it is all that is necessary, and it is founded upon a statute that is sufficient if it pursues the words of the law. There have always been two classes of citizens. The citizens of each state shall be entitled to all the privileges and immunities of citizens in the several states. That's the U.S. Constitution, Article 4, Section 2, Clause 1. Talks about it right in the Constitution. But the stranger that dwelleth among you shall be one that is born among you. Thou shalt love him as thyself. We were strangers in the land of Egypt. Leviticus 19:34. There's always been two classes of citizens, and most people have no idea what's going on. Love ye therefore as strangers, for you're strangers in the land of Egypt. That's how they enslaved everybody. They make you into a stranger so then they can enslave you. We get you to volunteer. The rights of sovereignty extend to all persons and things not privileged that are within the territory. They extend to all strangers resident therein, not only to those who are naturalized, and to those who are domiciled therein, having taken up their abode with the intention of permanent residence, but also to those who are residences transitory. All strangers are under the protection of the sovereign while they're within his territory, or a temporary allegiance in return for that protection. That's U.S. Supreme Court 1873. So again, not privileged. Okay, you take advantage of one of their privileges, you just turned yourself into a slave. Strangers have social security numbers. Deuteronomy 23:19-20. Thou shalt not lend upon usury to thy brother, usury of money, usury of victuals, usury of anything that is lent upon usury. Unto a stranger thou mayest lend upon usury, but unto thy brother thou shalt not lend upon usury. The bankster will not loan their so-called money unless you can prove you are a resident. That's a stranger. U.S. citizen does not have access to the first 8 amendments of the Constitution against the powers of the federal government. They have no right to trial by jury, no right to keep and bear arms, no right to face their accuser, no right to give evidence against state citizens, no right to common law indictment, mandatory military service, mandatory taxes, and may vote, but it doesn't mean anything. Why on earth would you want to be a U.S. citizen? You can be a national without being a citizen. Citizenship is part of being a political community. It even talks about it in the U.S. passport application. I don't know if you can see that. What's in the square boxes is non-citizen national. There it is there again in the instructions on the passport application. It is, however, true that in all common law countries and always consistently been held that the wife and minor children take the nationality of the husband and father. That is common law doctrine. In doing this, I shall have occasion incidentally to events how true it is that states and governments were made for man, and at the same time how his creatures and servants have first deceived, next vilified, and at last oppressed their master and maker. Let a state be considered as subordinate to the people, and everything else be subordinate to the state. Boy, I'll tell you, is that ever prophetic about what's happening now? Every citizen and freeman is endowed with certain rights and privileges to enjoy which no written law or statutes required. These are fundamental or natural rights recognized among all free people. We don't need their codes. As a general rule, men have a natural right to do anything which their inclinations may suggest, if it be not evil in itself and in nowhere impairs the rights of others. This law of nature, being coeval with mankind and dictated by God himself, is of course superior in obligation to any other. It is binding over all the globe in all countries and at all times. No human laws are of any validity or contrary to this, and such of them as are valid derive all their force, all their authority immediately from this original. That's taken from Blackstone's commentaries on the laws of England. And remember, in the Declaration of Independence, Jefferson said because the king had violated the law of nature, nature's God. He's taken it from there. All acts of the legislature apparently contrary to natural rights and justice are, in our law, and must be, in the nature of things, considered as void. The laws of nature are laws of God, whose authority cannot be superseded by no power on earth. A legislature must not obstruct our obedience to him, and from whose punishment they cannot protect us. All human constitutions which contribute God's laws, we are in conscience bound to disobey. That's why I say there's not too many Christians in this country anymore.
That's right.
The individual, unlike a corporation, cannot be taxed for the mere privilege of existing. The corporation is an artificial entity which owes its existence and charter powers to the state, but the individual's rights to live and own property are natural rights for the enjoyment of which an excise cannot be imposed. Acts 22:25-29. And they bound him with thongs. Paul said to the centurion that stood by, "Is it law for you to scourge a Roman, a man that is a Roman and uncondemned?" When the centurion heard that, he went and told the chief captain, that's like the general, right? Saying, "Take heed what thou doest, for this man is a Roman." Then the chief captain came and said to him, "Tell me, art thou a Roman?" He said, "Yes." And the chief captain answered, "With a great sum obtained I this freedom." And Paul said, "I was freeborn." And then straightway they departed from him, which should have examined him, and the chief captain was also afraid, for they knew that he was a Roman, because he had bound him. Again, two classes of citizens. Do you know who you are? Copies of these documents can be found on my website and linked under my recent videos. For a complete set of YouTube videos with private information, shares a DVD with over 50 searchable law dictionaries and other books and forms, contact me privately at engineerwin@yahoo.com. Donations to support this work are appreciated. I prefer gold or silver coin, but as an extremely less desirable alternative, I can accept the military script, the fake money, the IOUs, the Federal Reserve notes, the PayPal gifts, the checks, the money orders. Send me an email for particulars. The state citizen is immune from any and all government attacks and procedure absent contract. Every man is independent of all laws except those prescribed by nature. He's not bound by institutions formed by his fellow men without his consent. The rights of individuals are restricted only to the extent that they've been voluntarily surrendered by citizenship to the agencies of government. This is a letter that was sent by Arizona Senator Wayne Stump in 1985 to the heads of every law enforcement agency in Arizona. It's a state senator. Let's read it here, get in close. It says, "It's come to my attention that numerous individuals in our state have rescinded all of their contracts with the United States federal government, the state of Arizona, and each of its political subdivisions, establishing themselves as freemen under the organic national constitution of the Republic of the United States of America. Consequently, they may be driving without auto registration, driver's license, or any other evidence of contract. Because many law enforcement personnel may be unaware of the contractual nature of auto registration and driver's license, it is conceivable that this situation may lead to confrontation between these individuals and law enforcement personnel. I urge you to inform yourself and your personnel about this matter as soon as possible. If you would like to be briefed by someone knowledgeable on the subject, please contact me. In the meantime, inasmuch as this procedure is entirely appropriate when properly carried out, I would like to be personally notified of every such instance of confrontation." And so anyways, that's the essence of the letter. I wish we had some legislatures like that and legislators like that in Texas. State citizenship is a vested substantial property right, and the state has no power to divest or impair these rights. At common law, only gold or silver coin are legal tender. That's why I have my silver eagle in my pocket. If you want common law, it requires honest measures. Remember, these people are pirates. They're thieves. If they work on presumption. They presume everything, and until you defeat their presumptions, you're their slave. I mean, even that they're talking to you, just because they're talking to you, they're accusing you of being one of their slaves. That's exactly what's going on. This is Gold Reserve Act of 1934, located at 48 Stat 337. Says, as used in this act, the term United States means government of the United States. The term currency of the United States means currency which is legal tender in the United States and includes United States notes and Federal Reserve notes. So again, if that's what you're using, then you're a government employee. A dollar is a unit employed in the United States in calculating money's value. It is coin, both in gold and silver, is the value of 100 cents. Federal Reserve banknotes and other notes constituting a part of common currency of the country are recognized as good tender for money unless specifically objected to. You don't have to accept those Federal Reserve notes. There's nothing saying you have to accept those things. A dollar is the legal currency of the United States. The unit of money consisting of 100 cents, the aggregate of specific coins which add up to $1. In the absence of qualifying words, it cannot mean promissory notes, bonds, or other evidences of debt. A promissory note is a written promise to pay a certain sum of money at a future time unconditionally. Promissory note differs from a mere acknowledgement of debt without any promise to pay, as when the debtor gives his creditor an IOU. That's what these Federal Reserve notes are. There's no promise to pay anything on those things. They used to say you could go get some gold or silver, but now there's no promise to pay. It's an IOU. That's what circulates for money. Script. It's actually military script. Script, certificates of ownership, either absolute or conditional, as shares in a public company, corporate profits, etc. You've got shares in the United States. A script certificate, or assuredly, is an acknowledgement by the projectors of a company or the issuers of a loan that the persons named thereon, and more commonly the holder for the time being of the certificate, is entitled to a certain specified number of shares, debentures, bonds, etc., is usually given in exchange for the letter of allotment, and in turn is given up shares, debentures, or bonds which it represents. The term has also applied to the United States to warrants and other like orders drawn on the municipal treasury, and to fractional paper currency issued by the United States during the period of the Civil War. Military script. It's exactly what Federal Reserve notes are. It's military script. Articles of Confederation, Article 4. To better secure, promote mutual friendship and intercourse among the people of the different states of this union, the free inhabitants of each of these states, paupers, vagabonds, fugitives from justice accepted, shall be entitled to all the privileges and immunities of free citizens in the several states, and the people of each state shall have free ingress and regress to and from any other state, and shall enjoy therein all the privileges. So, paupers, vagabonds, and fugitives from justice accepted. What's a pauper? A pauper is one so poor it must be supported at public expense. Gee, that sounds like, because if you think about it, the Federal Reserve note is also a bill of credit, right? When you buy something with the Federal Reserve note, you're buying it on United States credit. So you're being supported at government expense. Pauper, a very poor person, especially one who receives aid for charity or public funds. So that's what happens when you again, Federal Reserve notes are bills of credit. And the absolute best that you can do with the Federal Reserve note is discharge debt with limited liability. It's impossible to pay anything with a Federal Reserve note. There is a distinction between a debt discharged and one paid. When discharged, the debt still existed, though divested of its character as a legal obligation during the operation of the discharge. These people lay awake at night with this stuff. Okay? That's exactly what happens when you use a Federal Reserve note. You discharge the debt with limited liability. Governments descend to the level of mere private corporation to take on the characteristics of a mere private citizen where private corporate commercial paper and securities is concerned. For purposes of suit, such corporations as individuals are regarded as entities entirely separate from government. That's Clearfield Trust Company versus United States, U.S. Supreme Court, 1943. Again, if you use Federal Reserve notes, you just walked away. That's a privilege, okay? Remember what we said. Everyone not privileged is sovereign. When you use Federal Reserve notes, you're taking advantage of a privilege of discharging debt with limited liability, and you just gave it up. This is Texas Business and Commerce Code 1.206. Whenever the Texas Business Commerce and Commerce Code creates a presumption with respect to a fact or provides that a fact is presumed, the trier of fact must find the existence of the fact unless and until evidence is introduced that supports the finding of its non-existence. They lay awake at night with this stuff, okay? This is all District of Columbia courts, all District of Columbia codes. Statutes have been passed extending the courts of admiralty and vice-admiralty far beyond their ancient limits, were depriving us of the accustomed and estimable privilege of trial by jury in cases affecting both life and property, to supersede the course of common law and instead thereof to publish and order the use and exercise of the law martial, and for altering fundamentally the form of government established by charter, which saw the misery to which such despotism, that's dictatorship, would reduce us, as taken from the cause of necessities for taking up arms 1775. A penitentiary is meant a penitent, an ordainer of penitence. This is all coming from the Roman cult, folks, and a place for penitence. Penance is a punishment imposed for a crime by the ecclesiastical laws, and it's an acknowledgement of the offense. Penance may be changed into a sum of money to be applied for pious uses, called commuting. Okay, what do you think happened when Roger Stone got his sentence commuted? When Trump commuted Roger Stone's sentence, they paid him off. They paid off the Roman cult. That's what they did. Under international law of warfare, all parties to a cause must appear by nom de guerre. An alien enemy cannot maintain an action in the war during the war's own name. If they're talking to you, you're at war. Okay, that's what you have to understand. They're talking to you, you're at war. The bar member is the guy to go after. A mixed war is one made one side by public authority and the other by mere private persons. Pecuniary cause, such as arising from withholding ecclesiastical dues or doing or neglecting some act relating to the church where some damage accrues to the plaintiff towards obtaining satisfaction for which he's permitted to institute a suit in spiritual court. Such, for instance, are the subtracting and withholding of tithes from the parson or vicar. So the Roman cult is basically an extortion racket. That's exactly what it is. The non-payment of ecclesiastical dues to the clergy. Pecuniary, remember that word pecuniary? The words penal and penalty in their strict and primary sense denote a punishment, whether corporal or pecuniary, imposed and enforced by the state for a crime or offense against its laws. The noun penalty is defined forfeiture to be forfeited for non-compliance with agreement. They got you in a contract. The words forfeit and penalty are substantially synonymous. A penal action is one founded entirely on statute, brought by the sole object of recovering a penalty or forfeiture imposed as punishment, while a remedial action is one brought to obtain compensation or indemnity. A penal action is an action on a penal statute, action of recovery of penalty given by statute. An action is founded entirely upon a statute. The only object is to recover a penalty or forfeiture. Such action is a penal action. A penal action is a civil suit. That's why they call it a quasi-contract. Okay, these people lay awake at night, this stuff. Penal action is a civil suit brought for recovery of a statutory forfeiture when inflicted as punishment for an offense against the public. Such actions are civil actions, on the one hand closely related to criminal prosecutions, on the other hand to private injuries. A subset, it's a quasi-contract, it's under a subset. A subset, its original action, a tort assumption was soon transferred to an action of contract, becoming afterwards a remedy, where there was neither tort nor contract, based at first only upon an express promise, it was afterwards supported upon an implied promise, and even upon a fictitious promise. They just make it up. That's exactly what they go. The real solution is don't even go in there. Make it their worst nightmare, and don't even go in there and make it so they don't want to talk to you. Introduced as a special manifestation of the action on the case, it soon acquired the dignity of a distinct form of action which superseded debt, became concurrent with account. See, these are all commercial terms, okay? Debt, account, case upon bailment, a warranty, bills of exchange, competed with equity, in the case of essentially equitable quasi-contracts, okay? They lay awake at night dreaming this stuff up. Both in Roman law and English law, there are certain obligations were not in truth contractual, but in law treats as if they were. They are contractual in law, but not in fact, being subject matter of a fictitious extension of the sphere of contract to cover obligations which do not in reality fall within it. They lay awake at night with this stuff. They're thieves. That's exactly what they are. It is well settled rule of law that he who seeks the benefit of contract must also assume the burdens. Voluntary acceptance of benefit of transaction. Okay, member privileges. Okay, privileges and benefits. Benefit or transactions equivalent to consent of all obligations arising from it so far as facts are known or ought to be known to persons accepting. A quasi-contractual action presupposes acceptance and retention of a benefit. Did you know jail's a benefit? By one party with a full appreciation of the fact under circumstances making it inequitable for him to retain the value without payment of its reasonable value. Quasi-constructive contracts are based solely upon the legal fiction or fictional law of the Satanic Trust. Remember we were talking about that? We're talking about that birth certificate. It's all based on that. It's impossible without the Satanic Trust. But individuals when acting as representatives of a collective group cannot be said to be exercising their personal rights and duties nor be entitled to their purely personal privileges. Rather, they assume the rights, duties, and privileges of the artificial entity or association over which they're agents or officers, and they're bound by its obligations. That's what they're doing, is they're assaulting you with their Roman cult Satanic Trust. It's all satanic. They're nothing but thieves and pirates. It's piracy is what it is. And that's life in prison. If you look at the United States Code, it's life in prison for piracy. Civil law, Roman civil law are convertible phrases. All falls under Roman law. Meaning the same system first jurisprudence, that system and rule of action which every particular nation, commonwealth, or city has established peculiarly for itself, more properly called municipal law. That's why it's called the municipal court, to distinguish it from the law of nature and international law. Let him who will be deceived be deceived. That's a Roman law maxim. They lie, cheat, steal as much as they can. Texas rules of civil procedure, federal rules of civil procedure. Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude except as punishment for a crime. So they create a fictitious crime, put on a show trial, sell you into slavery. That's exactly what they do. No slavery, nor involuntary, except as punishment for a crime where the party shall have been duly convicted. He, the prisoner, has as a consequence of his crime not only forfeited his liberty, but all his personal rights, except those which the law and its humanity affords him. He is, for the time being, a slave of the state. That's what it's all about, folks. And this is the last one. If we were Christians, we'd be putting them to death. Because if a man be found stealing any of his brethren of the children of Israel, and maketh merchandise of him, or selleth them, then that thief shall die. Thou shalt put evil away from among you. Deuteronomy 24:7. And so, it's up to you. Anyways, there's not many Christians out here. There are some. But, you know, the question I would always ask them is, are they a 501c3 church?
Yeah.
Anyways, that's the end for me. I got to go.